Welcome to Real Estate Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters, sharing proven strategies to help you build a better business today. And here is your host, Keith Doherty.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is top real estate agent Martie Law of Sleeping Giant Sotheby's International Realty, based out of Lihue, Hawaii. Martie Law has been licensed in Kauai for 15 years. Since she was born and raised in Kauai and her family was made up of contractors and developers, it was a good fit, especially since her passion is helping the people of Kauai maintain its rural nature, cultural specialness, and historical significance. Since being licensed in 2001, she worked for 10 years as a regular sales agent and then got her broker's license in 2011. She has also added the designation of ePro, SFR, and CRS to her name. Recently, she was nominated for the Top Agent Magazine February 2016 cover for the state of Hawaii. And subsequently, their local newspaper, the Garden Island, also ran a piece on her acknowledging the Top Agent nomination. So with all that, Martie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Did I do that all right? Lihue.
Yeah,
I got it.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I was worried. My pronunciation always isn't the best. I try to write things out. So
that's okay.
Obviously, we have a little idea of kind of how you got started, but maybe if you could kind of give us a little more of the background of what led you into real estate. You know, was it something maybe you kind of, it seems like your family was in it, so maybe you had a little inclination, but was it something you always knew you wanted to do, or did you kind of just stumble into it?
No, really, I kind of stumbled into it. I, unfortunately, but fortunately at the same exact time, I was a young single mom right out of high school, 18 and pregnant, and realizing that, you know, I had a job to do and I really wanted to raise my daughter on Kauai. I needed to start kind of researching what I could do to get a college education and start working right away. So Kauai is not really known for having higher quality education, quality higher education. So going off island is your only choice. So really to be close to my family, raise my daughter in the rural environment that I was raised in, I started kind of doing some research on what I could get, you know, education on quickly. And so real estate sort of evolved because of my family upbringing. Construction and real estate kind of go hand in hand, and it sort of just evolved from the necessity of needing to stay home, the education that was available at the time, and some familial backgrounds that kind of pushed me naturally in that direction. So it's sort of a combination of things. I don't know many people that kind of are born and say, I want to be a realtor when I grow up. You know, it's not sort of the industry that we necessarily gravitate to as far as, you know, thinking of where your net worth might be in business. So for me, it was definitely an evolution. I wanted to be an attorney, actually.
It seems like a lot of the people we've interviewed on the show, kind of the same thing. Something happened in life, there was some circumstance or something kind of triggered of, you know, like, hey, you know, maybe they bought a house and the realtor said to them, hey, you know, you'd probably be good at real estate, or there was a father that was in it, or a family, like you said, you kind of had, you know, with the contract.
Right.
So it's like people were, but I don't, like you're right, I don't think any little boy and girl, if you ask them, you know, I want to be a cop, or I want to be a lawyer or a doctor, they never say I want to be a real estate agent, right? It doesn't seem to be, even though it's probably one of the most lucrative industries out there, it's not like oh yeah, I'm going to grow up and be a real estate agent when I grow up.
Right, exactly.
So now, you know, kind of as you've developed success, what personal attributes or traits or qualities do you think have most contributed to the success you've had, and how do you think you developed those?
I think that my personal attributes that I've contributed are really honesty, respect, and just good old-fashioned hard work. Later on in life, I think customer service became really important to me. So the combination of all of those sort of melded into one where I'm sort of at currently, which is just really trying to give that personal touch to all of my clients, whether they're in a high-end market or in a low-end market. and just concentrating on the individual and their needs, no matter what price point. So that's important to me. And I think that I, arrived at these not ideas, but this is sort of inbred in me from the beginning. My parents never really taught honesty and integrity, respect and hard work. It was just done. So there was no lesson that I learned other than just living it from day one. My dad's a extremely hardworking general contractor on Kauai for over 45 years now. And from the minute that they touched foot on Kauai back in the late 60s, he just worked. He's a 6-day-a-week worker, 12 hours a day, and he's now in his early 70s, and he hasn't slowed down one bit. He still has the same exact work ethic. So big shoes to fill for me, of course, but I think that lifestyle has been inbred from the beginning. So I've just sort of built upon it with, hard work being sort of the catalyst, and then adding a few. Honesty and hard work really have to go hand in hand. You can't be dishonest and hardworking, especially in a small rural community like Kauai. We only have, when my parents moved here, I think there was less than 40,000 people here. I just looked at a statistic last week. I think we're up to 70,000 people, which is sort of astronomical for us in a strange sort of way. But being in a small community, you get weeded out real quick if you are a bad person. And so having some, honesty and hard work qualities really helps you mold into place here as it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on a few things there. Like you said, some of these you weren't exactly, developed. You kind of were raised, like you said, without even knowing it. It's not like your dad sat you down, like you said, and say, "This is how." You just lead by example. The old man, you saw how he's conducted business, and you're like, "Hey, it's worked for him," and it appears that that's the way you should treat people. And obviously, as you grew older and more mature, you realize that's how you should do things. But I think that's great.
Yeah, and I think that the feedback of that has been tremendous. I've seen the feedback to my dad in his work ethic from the community, and then as well to me in real estate, because as you know, sometimes real estate agents don't have the best reputation. Unfortunately, there's a few, bad people in every industry that make everybody look bad, but real estate is no exception. I think where there's money involved and, the reputation can be tarnished easily. So having to employ that as my base is really important to me, to try to even change the face, if you can, in real estate, at least locally, and, give everybody the hardworking person that they deserve. That's about it. So.
Absolutely. So do you think maybe, you've kind of touched on some of the traits and the qualities that you've used to kind of build yourself up. Can you maybe give us an example or specific examples of when your traits have played a role in your path towards success?
Let's see. I can think of a couple of examples. One being I manage this very large over 12-acre estate with 5 homes on it, and it's called Olupua Gardens. It's actually for sale, and when the owner decided he was going to sell it, it was sort of a painstaking process for him to decide they were going to sell because they love it so much. But their caretakers at the time had decided they were going to retire, so he needed to kind of let go of it because he couldn't live here full time and take care of it. And I offered to him, I said, well, you got me. I'll caretake for you. In the meantime, we'll try to sell it. And let's just, keep this goodness going on the property because it's a gorgeous property. So anyway, he entrusted, and it's a high-end listing. So it's, we had listed at $6.5 million originally. I think we're down to 4.9 now. But starting up that relationship was really based on a lot of that hard work aspect. I'm actually out there physically weeding, cleaning solar panels, cleaning gutters, cleaning the houses before all showings. Organizing the crew, just being completely physically present on the property at least 2 days a week if I can pull it off. 1 at the very minimum, 2 is my preference. And clipping and doing all the, watering, irrigating, doing whatever the property needs. And at the same time, I took down their expenses 50%. So they were incredibly happy with the combination. And entrusting somebody with your potentially $6 million property is, not an easy task. And they, send me thousands of dollars, to manage on behalf of the property, and that also takes a huge leap of faith to some degree. And in this particular case, I think that they trusted me immensely, and they knew that I was going to be hardworking, and they knew I was going to represent them. So that's one. And actually, funny enough, I sold the property originally back in 2001, and I lost contact with them for almost 15 years. And out of the blue one day, he calls me and says, we think we want to relist. Let's get together and talk about the option. And that's like the biggest faux pas in real estate, right, is letting your clients slip away from you and not keeping contact with them constantly. And it was just by nature of them moving, and they had trustees that had changed over the years, and so I had just lost contact. And so anyway, to the fact that he kept my card and followed me actually through the years, quietly, not weirdly, but just, kept in touch in his own ways by checking in from time to time on the website or whatever. And, coming back to me ultimately, he felt that he could trust me, and I was probably, when I met that client, I was probably 30 years old, and it was my first sale in real estate. So imagine being a brand new real estate agent, not really knowing too much yet, but just putting forth that honesty and that integrity and the respect and the hard work that was evident obviously at the time, kept him there for 15 years, even though I had lost contact. So I thought that was pretty special, and now, we're probably just about to put it in escrow. We're dealing with a very interested buyer now, but I'd say that would be the top story on my list. I think a second story would be that one of my competitors, and this just sort of plays to the heart of the honesty part of it, I think, is one of my competitors, not even in my own office, was going to Costa Rica for a month-long vacation to go with the howler monkeys or something like that. Anyway, she contacted me, and we're totally not even from the same agency at all. I mean, we're true technical competitors, but we're friendly. We've known each other for a long time. She actually asked me if I would cover all of her transactions and all of her buyers in the month that she was gone, because she knew she wouldn't be able to give them the good customer service that she's used to doing. And I thought that was a huge compliment coming from, not only just an agent in your office you might be buddies with and close to, but a completely different office, a competitor no less, and somebody that I don't really talk to that often. But she trusted me to handle all of her transactions and not steal her clients. And we closed, I think, 3 deals while she was gone. And she was ecstatic because she could have lost all of them if she had gone MIA for 30 days. You know what I mean? So I think those would be two specific examples I can sort of grasp off the top of my head right now.
Yeah, well, that really speaks volumes that your competitor say, hey, run my business for me while I'm gone. That
Right.
definitely speaks volumes that obviously your integrity and honesty, that you would, follow through and give 100% just like they were your own to help her out. So that's awesome.
Right. Thank you. And it was
So obviously, yeah. I mean, I think you just, it's rare. I think that you find people that would go to that extent, to help others. So that really speaks volumes for you as a person, obviously. So, kind of, you obviously had success. You've built success over the years, and I'm sure, not everything has been easy. Even like you said, you're kind of like, a new mom and kind of had to get into, choose a career path, but. Maybe could you talk about some of the major adversities and trials that you've had to overcome to kind of get where you have and had the success you've had so far?
The adversities, I think, were just being that young mom. And like I had said, I don't think there was any, giving up wasn't an option. It just wasn't an option. Giving up was never in the vocabulary for my whole life. It's just not an option. As I ask my parents every year on their anniversary, what's your guys', secret to being married now for, 50 years, or they're almost at 50 years now. And my mom always says, it's just that you make the commitment, and there's no option. Divorce is not an option. So that, for some, that works for them. And I think that obviously having that also be sort of inbred in me is, similar to why I didn't never really give up on my mission. And I think being from a rural area serves as its own source of adversity in a strange sort of way. When you grow up on an island, there's not a lot of, education is one of our challenges here. When I was growing up in the 70s, and, we had 3 public schools and no private schools, which now we, of course, have many. So our education has come up quite a bit in the last 10, 15 years. But when I was going to school, I don't think what most people don't realize in Hawaii is, and I'm Caucasian, I just have to say that as part of the story, born and raised here, but as a white person, and we call them haoles. That's the Hawaiian word for white person. And so growing up in the early 70s in a very rural environment where there was only maybe 4 or 5 haole students in the school. So that was actually a lot of adversity for me because I'm a minority here. And I think that if on the mainland, people don't realize that when you're a white person in Hawaii, you're the minority, because our culture is made up of Hawaiians and Filipinos and Japanese and Chinese and a mix of all of those together. So from an early childhood, I just remember having to figure, and my parents didn't coddle me. They weren't like, oh, poor pitiful you, we'll take you out, we'll homeschool you. It was none of that kind of stuff. It was, suck it up, you got to go to school tomorrow, if I had any, issues. Because back in the day, it was the discrimination, quote-unquote discrimination, was against white people, so and incomers, traditionally. So I was, harassed terribly and bullied as a child growing up in the public school system here. So I think not only my upbringing being one way that it was, to be tough and be honest and be hardworking, even as a kid, you just had to persevere. Just get through it, it will get better, and you figure it out as you go along. You make friends, you figure out how to assimilate. If you're doing something weird and it's not cool with the pack, you figure it out. Hopefully it's not something bad, but you just, you work your way through it. And I think my parents did make sure that they were never helicopter parents. They didn't catch me before I fell. It was learn as you go and figure it out. So I think that has helped for me to get over some adversity too. I mean, adversity happens throughout all of our lives, whether you have a troubled youth or, like for me, I had a sort of rocky beginning to my adult life because I was pregnant so early as a single mom too, with no support at all except for my parents. I think all of that bundled together just sort of makes you stronger. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, that whole adage, I think that really does apply.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what is interesting, I like to kind of go back and highlight it because I think it's a key point for anybody listening to us, is that your parents, I like what you said, and it really sticks with me because I feel the same way with my wife. You talk to your mother, and divorce it's not an option, right? And I think that's some of the problem with society today, that people go into it like it's, oh, I'm going to go to the store and buy this new pair of shoes, right? If you don't like them, you could take them back. Well, and I think that society has evolved to where people feel that it just is about like, okay, well, we'll try it. No, you don't try it. Okay, this is a life commitment, and I think that, and I think that stuck with you as like another thing that you've learned is like, that you don't quit on things. You find a way to get to the end point. However you have to do it, you're going to get there, and there's no giving up. So I really wanted to point that out because I think you've kind of inherited that, another quality of why you don't give up, because it's not an option, right? You don't even think it's not a choice. It's not like there's A and B. It's like there's A and C, and the A and C mean getting to the end, not quitting.
Right, absolutely.
So that's great.
Yeah.
So kind of moving forward, thinking down the road a little bit, what do you see your vision for your career, say, over the next 5 years? Where do you see things going?
I see, basically I want to just continue to sort of masterfully, hopefully masterfully, acquire my clients with this base that I have going forward right now, with good clients and bringing in more good clients and giving them that good customer service. And I hope to just continue to add sort of one client at a time, or maybe 3 clients at a time, if the market's starting to heat up. So the reality is I'm doing a lot more business just from the market increase. But I want to continue to focus on just the marathon that is this business to be successful. Not a sprint, but a marathon. So you trug along little by little, find your pace, and you just keep on and adding to that base. And that base will eventually, continue to grow in and of itself as each client you close who's happy, and hopefully they continue to be happy, will tell 5 friends or what have you, and then they in turn will tell a few more, and just naturally grow with that process. And I hope to have, I guess they call it critical mass, and just I think that's what it's called, critical mass. I haven't read up on it lately, but I'm getting to a point where it's sort of self-sufficient, where you're dealing with your pool of referrals from other happy clients and friends and family and people that you work with in the community, and just having that continue to circle back generation after generation, if you can say that. Now that I'm in my mid-40s, all of my classmates are all people who are running for county council and mayor, and they've got seats on government, on Oahu, and it's just kind of interesting to see the evolution. These are people that I were in the trenches with back in public school, right? We were all dirty and running around barefoot together back in the 70s. And now everybody's professional and kind of together and has their families, and they're making money, and they're buying houses and making good choices. And so I'm sort of part of that evolution, and I hope that I can capitalize on that segment, sort of my classmate segment, as well as my parents, friends and family related to us on island. And then being that my dad's such a wonderful contractor for so many years on Kauai, hopefully, and I know this is true, his stature on the island helps support my growth, because he's so great, and I guess I'm biased to say that because I'm his daughter and so grateful and respectful of him, but he laid out the pathway for me to just follow along almost. We're in slightly different industries, but when people find out I'm Curtis Law's daughter, it's like, oh, I'm all of a sudden I'm like royalty in a silly sort of way. It's like, oh, I know your father. He built my house back in '72. It's wonderful. It's survived 2 hurricanes, and we love him. And pass, our good sentiments on to your parents. So somehow it validates my worth, being that I'm lucky enough to have a parent that, has been as successful as he. And I can just hopefully continue to perpetuate that into the future. So with that being said, I think that sums up my my trajectory, sort of where I'm headed is wherever it's going to take me, but with the support of my clients and my family as it has been.
Absolutely, and I was going to kind of follow that up with, but I think you kind of answered it. Is, how do you market yourself for continued growth? And you kind of covered on that. You kind of touched all the points of the relationships and continuing to build, and just serving the customers and taking care of people and building that. Like you said, building your reputation and just having people, you're becoming well known, like you said, and the association with your father and all that kind of just coupled with itself, I think just continues to as you increase your experience as well.
Right. I think in addition to that, I think as far as how to market yourself is of course having an online presence. So you've got to have a little bit of something going on in every department, right? Because the people who are incoming from the mainland aren't going to know me from Adam. They just are going to do their research, and hopefully with having a touch in every area, so to speak, Facebook, Twitter, having my own website, and then having, multiple other sort of small areas that people look at, whether it's Instagram or or blogs. People seem to love blogs, about the island and stuff like that. So I think, all of that together will help continue my marketing approach into the future.
Yeah, you're right. I think with this day and age, like you said, I think a lot of people turn to the internet, before they do anything. I mean, everybody has a phone, which is like a mini computer now, so they can easily type in a name. I mean, and I think a lot of people research agents before they even probably contact them. Like, oh, I know all about you. I found your website, I found this and that. So
absolutely, I can't tell you how many times I've shown property, and somebody says, oh, your grandfather was the founder of Sleeping Giant Realty. And I'm like, yes. And they have to kind of dig deep for that, because that's in a bio somewhere on Sleeping Giant's website that I think got written, 15 years ago. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. People really do want to know who you are before they meet you, and they may spend, a good amount of time doing their research. Back in the day, it might have been stalkerish and weird, but now it's like it's the protocol. It's like necessary,
Yeah, they run a background check on you. We're like, now, I see you got a speeding ticket a few years ago, and, they're like, whoa, hold on a minute. We're like, hey, we do,
a little too private.
we do a lot of research when we're hiring a realtor, so we want to make sure you're a good person. Like, okay, well, that's a little too far. But
that's funny.
So what, I think that there's, a lot of times there's misconceptions when it comes to agents. I think some people, even on their own, they think, oh, well, maybe I'll just put a sign out in front of my house. No big deal. I can sell my house. Maybe it's a seller's market. Maybe things are going well. But what do you think that biggest misconception or myth people have about working with a real estate agent is?
I think that the biggest misconception is that we're all kind of jerks, and money hungry, potentially egotistical, rude, aggressive. And, by no means is that, at least for me, the truth. And I don't know if it comes from Hollywood, kind of portraying it on the movie screen as, backbiting, hard-driven, real estate agents that, turn over clients, one an hour or what have you, and, bring in $4 million of sales in a month or whatever it is. There's always that sort of kind of out there. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that people forget that we're actually there for them, to give them a service that they need. And granted, there is a commission involved, yes, and a lot of people feel like the commission is not justified, which is hence why I try to add in a lot of hard work. I don't think many of my clients feel like I don't deserve my commission, because sometimes you will have a quick sale and it's like, oh, that came easy, and, it almost feels unfair. You should work hard for the amount of money that we have the potential to make. So, I think that I kind of wish money wasn't the number one aspect of real estate, but to be perfectly honest, it is. I mean, it's, it's probably the number one reason why people get into real estate, and then you culture it to how you want it to be, and that's sort of what I'm doing now, and hoping to kind of change the face, put a friendly face, a face of aloha, which is how we live here. Giving back to others. It's not just a take, it's a give and take. And in the beginning, you've got to give more than you take. And I think I would rather my client walk away and say she was worth every penny of that commission than be disgruntled because they paid me too much and I did nothing. So I think that that's probably one of the major misconceptions, at least in the industry itself. And I think once you find a good agent who is truthfully on your side and out for your best interest, then that's a really good relationship. That's a symbiotic relationship, because they need you and we need them just as much. I mean, they need us as agents and we need them as clients. So it's a total even relationship. And I think getting that out and living that will help deter the negativity that sort of surrounds our industry naturally. That's all I can really think of for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, they think people are, you're just out for the commission. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is that it's just all money driven, and it
Right.
seems awful expensive. But, as for going through everything, there's a lot more involved than just putting a sign in front of somebody's house. There's a lot more details
Absolutely.
involved.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm always um, surprised by just the complexity. I mean, it never ends, the complexity of real estate. I mean, I've been in it now 15 years, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't learn something new. And I think that new agents sometimes they think it's going to be easy, and they get in and they go, great, I'm going to make a quick buck, and they are quickly reminded or shown how actually we do have to work for this money. Representation is not an easy thing. You're on the line to be sued at any minute because you're taking on this gigantic responsibility for your client. And, you've got to tread lightly and carefully and make sure you don't ever forget who you represent. If you represent the buyer, that's who you represent. Next week you're going to represent a seller. And you've got to change hats all the time. And you've got to learn the code of your county that you live in, and the rules and the zoning laws, and how to deal with with governmental agencies. And not to mention, that's all that stuff that you should have in your hat before you even arrive at somebody's house. You need to do comp work. You've got to, a long detailed comp sheet, not just look at what's kind of selling in the area. I mean, I put together a lengthy list of what the subject property is and what the comps are, and I spell it all out in a graph form, and I come up with a formula that, I can show my client, look, this is how I arrived at your number. So, I think the more detail that you bring with, which comes with a lot of work, the more reputable you'll be to your client, and you can service them properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads me into like a hypothetical question here. But let's say you get a call from a family member or a friend in another state where you're not licensed. You're obviously licensed out in Hawaii there. What and they want to sell their home, so they're like, hey, I'm gonna sell my home. What advice would you give them to help them select an agent that could best serve their needs, kind of like how you take care of your clients?
What I do is I try, in fact, this happens to me all the time. My friends and family who live in the mainland call me for advice all the time. And it's because they trust me and they know my experience. And I have to tell them right off the bat, I go, now remember, I'm licensed in Hawaii, so the laws in Nevada or California are different. So please make sure you talk to your agent about this. But I can give you scenarios as how it's done here, and maybe you can talk to them about the differences about how it's done here. Because the people that I talk to who are asking me for advice all grew up here. So they know, they've grown up here, but they've moved away for business or school. And I just basically tell them that I think that interviewing your agent is really important, getting a good fit personality-wise. And if it's somebody close to me, like family, like this actually does happen to me with my brother. He was a buyer in the Oakland area in California, and they asked me, for a ton of advice, of course, on just the general industry of real estate, how it works, and what do we do first, and what are the expectations, and how do we, yada yada. And so I got them all clued in on that, and I said, let me find you a good Sotheby's agent in the area. And I actually went and I Googled a handful of agents that I, somewhat cherry-picked from the Sotheby's website, and then I would call them or email them and do a very informal interview with them to see if I could sense over the phone or over email how motivated they were, how loyal they were, how friendly they were, how pushy they were, or not pushy, probably a better way, and then matched the client to my referral agent in the mainland. And pretty much that has worked every time, and so far it's worked out wonderfully, but it's sort of a concerted effort where I know the personality of the person who's asking me advice, and I have to do a little bit of generalizations on, personality types and trying to match the client and the realtor and making sure that everybody's going to have a comfortable fit. And then I follow up and say, but if this doesn't work out, you are free to look for someone else or call me back. We'll rehash it all over again and find somebody else. But I think really ultimately finding that personality match is important, because if you don't mesh with your agent and feel like you can trust them, then it just makes the buying process or the selling process really stressful, unnecessarily so. If you can eliminate that personality factor and get people in a cohesive situation, things roll along a lot smoother. And then everybody can kind of focus on the deal at hand, which is either selling your house or buying something, and get down to the nitty-gritty of the details of the business at hand. Because we've gotten that personality stuff out of the way. Okay, everybody loves each other, let's move forward. So I think that would be the number one thing, is finding the proper fit, because really real estate is the same almost everywhere. I mean, there's a beginning point and an end point, and it's basically exactly the same no matter where you are. Some of the nuances might be tiny bit different, the laws might be a tiny bit different, but the process is ultimately the same. So I just try to get my friends and family who need an agent getting comfortable with their agent. And that's probably it.
Absolutely. And if somebody wants to learn more about you and kind of what you can do for them, especially, if they're obviously in your area in Hawaii, where's the best place to find more information about you and how you can help them?
Oh, absolutely. I have a website, which is funny because I never thought I would ever have a website, but I have a website, martielaw.com, pretty simple. And I've got all of my listings up there, our office listings. I've got the entire island listings. We actually share the same MLS with the Big Island, so you can actually search Big Island properties from my website as well. And then, of course, I write blogs, and I have a contact me page. And I'm happy to start a dialogue with anybody, either through the website. They can always just email me directly at martie@sleepinggiant.com. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook business page. I'm on Twitter. And what else am I on? Google Plus. I kind of hit most of the normal social media sites. And I would say those would probably be the best. Those are the places that I monitor the most. So there's updated information and not in a bothersome way. Like, I'm not posting to Facebook every day. You're going to get a little blurb from me here and there. And if you're interested in more, I'm every account is tied into my phone. So I'm fairly quickly responsive when I get a lead. And I'd be happy to help anybody who's thinking about getting into the industry, just to kind of, if they're interested in picking the brain of somebody who's done it from scratch to here to now, and of course for buyers and sellers who may be looking for an agent, absolutely call me up.
Excellent. Well, we want to obviously, Martie, thank you for taking time out of your schedule and coming here and sharing your business experience with our listeners. And if anybody's listening and you want to reach out, as Martie said, she has her website, martielaw.com, Facebook, Twitter, all those. Probably sounds like if you just go to Google and type her name in, you're going to find her. But also below this interview, we'll have a link to her website as well as any other contact information, so that you can reach out and get in touch with her if you want. So with that said, everybody, thank you for joining us on this show. And until our next show, everybody have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Real Estate Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading real estate industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at realestateinnovatorsradio.com today.